And welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Renata Kiss.
And tonight, the DOJ decides not to prosecute Merrick Garland.
Meanwhile, Israel warns of a wider conflict with Hezbollah.
And the East Coast braces for a sweltering heat wave. All right, happy Monday, everyone. We'll start with this. House Republicans are now planning to file their contempt case against Attorney General Merrick Garland in federal court, as House Speaker Mike Johnson announced the move on Friday after the DOJ outright rejected the House's criminal referral against Garland for repeatedly defying a congressional subpoena. The DOJ released a letter saying, quote, consistent with this longstanding position and uniform practice, the department has determined that the responses by AG Garland to the subpoenas issued by committees did not constitute a crime, and accordingly, the department will not bring the congressional contempt citation before a grand jury. Texas Senator Ted Cruz said the DOJ's response here was far from surprising. Here he is.
The number of people on planet Earth who were surprised when the Biden DOJ said they will not prosecute Merrick Garland's contempt citation is zero. No person out of the 8 billion people on the planet was surprised because this DOJ doesn't care. Under Merrick Garland, DOJ exists to do two things: attack the Democrats' enemies and protect the Democrats' friends.
Speaker Johnson accused the DOJ of creating a two-tiered system of justice, pointing out that Trump allies Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro were prosecuted for the same exact charges.
Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is being pressed on the lackluster state of the economy. On Sunday, ABC's Jonathan Karl asked her why voters still complain about the economy if the macroeconomy is doing well. Yellen mostly blamed the pandemic for the public's dissatisfaction.
It is true that over the last roughly 3 years, there's been a significant increase in the price level. It's now rising at a very slow, close to normal rate. But yes, Americans see that. And mainly it comes on top of concern about costs that were making life very difficult.
But she added that on the other hand, wages have increased.
Wages have also gone on up during this time. And government studies show that for households at all points in the income distribution, wages have gone up somewhat more than prices.
According to factcheck.org, wages have not actually gone up when adjusted for inflation. Real weekly earnings decreased by 3.4%. At the same time, inflation soared to a 40-year high under Biden. Consumer prices went up about 18 to 19%, while gas prices went up 29%.
And this is something we've talked about repeatedly on this show, that it's understandable that the Biden administration has to kind of clean this situation up because the American people are really feeling this. No matter how you try to spin the numbers, that's something you just cannot ignore, say, every time you get gas or go to the grocery store.
Right, and what they're talking about really is core inflation, which most people don't care about because it doesn't include food or energy prices. So obviously people are going to care about what's affecting their wallets. Yeah,
very well said. Yeah, it's going to be a sticky situation for the Biden campaign indeed. Speaking of which, the campaign did rake in some serious cash this weekend, raising a rather impressive $30 million at a star-studded fundraiser in L.A. Saturday's event set a new record for the most money raised by the Democratic Party in a single night. And during the event, President Joe Biden made a special issue out of the Supreme Court, calling it out of kilter with its conservative majority.
The next president is likely to have 2 new Supreme Court nominees. 2 more. He's already appointed 2 that have been very negative in terms of the rights of individuals.
Biden was joined on stage by late-night host Jimmy Kimmel, as well as former President Barack Obama, who also commented on the court situation. He said, the power of the Supreme Court is determined by elections. What we're seeing now is a byproduct of 2016. Again, that's Barack Obama's quote. Despite the night's success, though, it didn't exactly end on the best note as far as optics go. Conservatives were quick to share a rather awkward closing moment where Obama took Biden by the hand to lead him off stage. Now, this comes as an NBC News poll from February shows 62% of voters say they're very concerned about Biden's age going into a second term. That's compared to only 34% who said the same about Trump, who, by the way, turned 78 years old on Friday.
And speaking of Donald Trump, he launched a new group on Saturday to reach black voters. On the same day, he joined a roundtable at a predominantly black church in Detroit, a city that Trump lost badly in 2020. But recent polls show the voting bloc has shifted towards the former president. The Wall Street Journal found that 30% of black men in swing states are likely to vote for Trump, a huge increase from the 12% in the last election. The Biden campaign later blasted Trump as an enemy to black voters, but the former president called Biden the super predator on Saturday.
So Biden, on the other hand, Biden wrote the devastating 1994 crime bill, talking about super predators. That was Biden. You know, he walks around now talking about the black vote. He's the king of the super predators, and he wrote the 1994 crime bill that you talk about so much. I guess everybody here knows about that, especially if you happen to be black. And he was the one with the super predators, so just please remember that when you think you're going to vote Democrat.
Trump also believes that his legal battles have won him some support from the key demographic.
They're doing to him what they've been doing to us for 400 years, man. You know what I'm saying? That's why I really like him. He don't have to do this. He does not have to. He's a billionaire. He can go to the beach, and no one would fault him, you know what I'm saying? But he's real, he's strong, and he's the only one who can help us.
But some Republicans fear the campaign investment is coming too late and that the infrastructure to reach black voters isn't in place to be effective.
But Republicans aren't the only ones afraid. Democrats are now fast at work coming up with plans to thwart Trump should he be reelected this November. According to the New York Times, a sprawling network of Democratic officials, progressive activists, watchdog groups, and even ex-Republicans has been taking, in their words, extraordinary steps to prepare for a potential second Trump presidency. The ACLU is one of those groups, and they're gearing up for a new wave of lawsuits to stall or perhaps outright block Trump's policies, especially when it comes to immigration. At the same time, the Biden administration is implementing new regulations, making it harder to fire federal workers as Trump himself vows to clean house among various federal agencies. Meanwhile, on the state level, Democrat governors are stockpiling abortion medication out of fear that Trump will stop interstate distribution, though Trump has actually remained fairly moderate on the abortion issue so far. All right, and up next, we'll dive into some international news. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this.
I actually called the clinic thinking that it was an abortion clinic. I knew that at the time my partner wasn't going to be involved. I did want SUSAT, but I was having financial problems. And I was like, I don't need an appointment. They're like, just come in and we'll help you. And so I went in, and yeah, that practically changed my life. I had not been sleeping in. I remember like being able to sleep that night because I knew that like something was gonna happen. I was able to carry Suzette full term and have her. I'm extremely happy that I did not get an abortion. I don't think I would be here today. Or my daughter. I don't think I would ever sacrifice as much as I did, because I feel that I did it for her. And if it wasn't that people that supported me, I don't think I would have ever been here.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same, or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
All right, and welcome back to FISM News. Once again, I'm Samuel Case. Let's continue now with news in Gaza, where for those who are worried about the war spreading beyond its current borders, apparently Israel shares some of those concerns as well. FISM's Ian Patrick has more.
The Israeli military force is warning that conflicts with another terror group in Lebanon threaten to expand the war from its current state. Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson Daniel Hagari posted a video to X on Sunday in which he explained the IDF's position on attacks from groups outside of Gaza. Specifically, Hagari mentioned conflicts with the Iran-backed group Hezbollah, which operates out of Lebanon to the north.
The Hezbollah terror organization in Lebanon has been escalating its attacks against Israel. Since deciding to join the war that Hamas started on October 7th, Hezbollah has fired over 5,000 rockets, anti-tank missiles, and explosive UAVs from Lebanon at Israeli families, homes, and communities. Hezbollah's increasing aggression is bringing us to the brink of what could be a wider escalation, one that could have devastating consequences for Lebanon and the entire region.
Hezbollah has increased its attacks on the northern Israeli border, which it shares with Lebanon. The group has consistently issued cross-border attacks since Israel began its campaign against Hamas, but Israel has retaliated at times, and more recently via airstrike last Tuesday, which ended up killing a senior Hezbollah commander. The terror group responded by shooting down an Israeli drone and launching a missile barrage on Israeli sites. Israel responded to those attacks on Friday, initiating what has now become a near-daily cross-border exchange of fire. But in Hagari's message, he affirms that Israel will do what it needs to defend itself from neighboring aggressors.
When we say that we will not let October 7th happen again on any one of our borders, we mean it. Israel will take the necessary measures to protect its civilians until security along our border with Lebanon is restored. One way or another, we will ensure the safe and secure return of Israelis to their homes in northern Israel. This is not up for negotiation. Israel has a duty to defend the people of Israel. We will fulfill that duty at all costs.
Hagari further explained that Israel will continue to fight Iran's axis of evil, as he called it, for the sake of Israel's security. And it seems as though the threat of wider conflict is not lost on the rest of the world, especially with our government in the United States. President Biden's envoy, Amos Hochstein, is arriving in Israel this week to meet with Israeli military leaders on this very same issue, hoping to prevent the war from expanding any further. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Thanks, Ian. Certainly a tense situation over there. Speaking of other updates in Israel, we do have an update regarding the Israeli military right now, and that is that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has now dissolved the 6-member war cabinet in a move that was widely expected following the departure of former General Benny Gantz. Netanyahu is now expected to hold meetings about the war in Gaza with a much smaller group of ministers.
At the same time, Israel announced yesterday that they will implement tactical pauses in southern Gaza for aid deliveries. According to CBS News, the pause will apply to 7.4 miles in the Rafah area, but it will not include Rafah City, where the IDF continues to target Hamas militants. The pauses will happen daily from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. until further notice. This will allow 8 trucks to deliver goods to the Kerem Shalom crossing alongside the Egyptian border. The IDF said the decision came after talks with the United Nations and other international aid agencies. All this comes as the IDF announced the death of 11 Israeli soldiers in recent Gaza attacks. Israel has so far lost 308 soldiers since the conflict began last year.
At the same time, problems continue to mount for the U.S. aid pier in Gaza as the U.S. is temporarily removing it altogether. CENTCOM posted on Friday, quote, "Today, due to expected high seas, the temporary pier will be removed from its anchored position in Gaza and towed back to Israel." This, of course, is just the latest in a long line of setbacks for the pier. In late May, the pier underwent multi-million-dollar repairs after being damaged by rough waters. Following those repairs, it was only operational for a few more days before the UN paused aid deliveries on it due to safety concerns.
Meanwhile, late last week, the Biden administration announced that it will impose sanctions on an Israeli organization for allegedly blocking convoys meant to deliver aid to the Gaza Strip. The organization, known as Tazov 9, has been accused of blockading or even destroying truck convoys delivering relief supplies to the Gaza Strip. Activists were recently filmed destroying packages meant to go to Gaza, allegedly blocking trucks from delivering their supplies. In a statement, Tazov 9 said the sanctions were difficult and shocking, explaining that their goal was to stop aid to the enemy in a time of war. In some instances, Israeli police were witnessed watching as activists burned and destroyed convoys headed to Gaza. The news follows the Israeli police commissioner claiming that National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir was pressuring him and his office not to provide any protection to the relief convoys. Ben-Gvir, who has not yet commented on the allegations, is reportedly affiliated with organizations that work with Tazov 9.
And still in the Middle East, U.S. officials are confirming successful airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. CENTCOM said last week American forces destroyed 7 sites in Yemen, in addition to destroying a Houthi drone and 2 remotely operated boats. Officials say all of it was being used to target maritime vessels and endanger commercial shipping. Those strikes come as the Iran-backed Houthis have resumed their attacks on civilian shipping in the Red Sea. Early last week, the group launched 2 cruise missiles at a cargo ship on its way to Italy, damaging the vessel and injuring one of its crew members in the attack. The day prior, the group also attacked another cargo vessel, which had to be rescued by the U.S. Navy. CENTCOM said, quote, "The United States will continue to act with partners to hold the Houthis accountable and degrade their military capabilities." Houthi officials say they will not stop their attacks until Israel ends the war in Gaza.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is saying that Iran is making nuclear escalations following reports that Tehran has expanded its production rate. The UN's atomic watchdog said on Friday that Iran started up 3 advanced nuclear centrifuges that enrich uranium faster. The agency says Tehran plans to install 26 more. Concern is mounting as Iran stockpiles uranium enriched to be near weapons level quality. It comes after the agency censured the nation earlier this month for failing to cooperate fully. The State Department spokesman Matthew Miller swiftly condemned Iran's latest move, stating that the nuclear expansion has no credible peaceful purpose. The department said they will respond accordingly, but did not list any steps they might take. And we have more news coming up next, but first let's go to a moment in history.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Well, in our journey through history, let's travel across the Atlantic to a region of the world that has often been considered the hub of civilization. We will explore a body of water that connects 3 continents, and for thousands of years, it has been the literal physical intersection of cultures, worldviews, rulers, religions, and nations. Let's explore the body of water that connects these 4 regions: Europe to the north, Asia to the east, Africa to the south, and the Atlantic world to the west, the Mediterranean Sea. Known throughout history as the Great Sea, the Mediterranean was for thousands of years the largest known body of water in the known world. The sea spans from the coast of the Holy Land in the east to the Strait of Gibraltar in the west, where the southern tip of Spain meets the northernmost point of Africa and connects to the Atlantic Ocean. The northern border of the sea meets Spain, France, Italy, Greece, and Turkey, while the southern border covers the entirety of the top of the African continent, from Egypt to Morocco. Its name reflects its strategic location at the midst of a convergence of world cultures. The name Mediterranean is Latin from the 2 words meaning middle or center and earth. Many of the significant events in world history and the dominant cultures of world history, certainly in Western civilization, have taken place either at or near the Mediterranean Sea. In ancient times, the Egyptians dominated the Mediterranean region, and for a brief period, the Israelites under mighty David and his son Solomon were the dominant force. After the Assyrians, Babylonians, and Persians rose and subsequently fell, the Greeks under Alexander the Great rose to power in the region. They were, of course, quickly replaced by the mighty Romans. And for 500 years, the Roman Empire wrapped tightly around the Great Sea, its dominance stretching from the Middle East to the Atlantic coast of Britain and Spain in Western Europe. Now, after the Western fall of Rome, three heirs to the throne, if you will, rose to the region: Western Christendom, which historians know now as medieval Europe, Islam, and the Byzantine Empire. And for the next 1,500 years, really up until the present day, in some regards, these cultural forces have continued to dominate the region where cultures and religions have clashed for centuries. Now, the Mediterranean region's greatest claim to fame has to be, without question, its eastern edge, the land where the Lord Jesus Christ once lived, walked, performed miracles, died, and finally rose again in the 1st century AD. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
But I felt very comfortable in that decision because I found a lot of support. Like, everyone here, always made sure, keep in contact with me. This is what ultimately changed my decision, knowing that I had all this support that I didn't know I had. Now that he's here and he's 4 months old, I look at him and I honestly, it just makes me want to cry.
If investing with biblical values is important to you, you're not alone. Millions of people invest their money according to their personal beliefs. That's why we offer a subscription service that gives you access to biblically responsible stocks, buys and sells, and a portfolio tracker tool that tracks your asset allocations. Being a Financial Issues partner is the best way to ensure your investments reflect your values. At Financial Issues, we believe in providing our partners with the best possible information and resources so they can make informed decisions about their money. With our help, you can feel confident that your investments are in line with your personal beliefs. Gain access to our biblically based stock buys and sells for only $132 per year. Invest biblically, responsibly. Go to financialissues.org and become a partner today. That's financialissues.org.
Welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. Well, let's continue with a bit of a weather update here. Record-breaking heat is predicted starting this week in the Midwest all the way to the Northeast. Here's CBS's David Parkinson explaining what this heat dome is.
So a heat dome is basically an area where you've got high pressure over the country, and essentially, or any part of the world, really. It could be in Asia, it could be in Africa, it could be in Europe, and we've seen that already as well. You've got high pressure over an area, and it's pushing down. So all the hot air at the ground can't escape up, right? Hot air likes to rise. Well, it can't do that, so it just keeps the hot air down at the ground, and it really just sort of broils the temperatures.
Big cities that will be affected by this increased heat include Chicago, New York City, Washington, D.C., Pittsburgh, and Boston. Even northern Maine will likely see temperatures in the 90s. The National Weather Service warns all those affected to take the heat wave seriously. Here are their tips for staying cool.
Number one, get into a cool area. And I'm going to do that right now. Get into the shade. Get into a shady area to keep yourself cool. Get into an air-conditioned area, or even a cooling shelter is a safe place to be in the heat. Wear light-colored clothing. Stay really cool by doing that. Loose fitting really helps as well. You got to stay hydrated. I've got my water bottle. Stay hydrated. And one of the most important things that you can do, check in on each other. Some are very vulnerable to the heat. Check in on them. Make sure that they're safe.
Yeah, be sure to take those precautions this week. It is going to be quite toasty. Meanwhile, it's also heating up in California, where more than 1,200 people were forced to flee due to wildfires just north of Los Angeles this weekend. The Post Fire, as it's known, began on Saturday afternoon and quickly grew out of control with wind gusts of up to 70 miles per hour, whipping the flames into an absolute frenzy. More than 14,000 acres were on fire as of this morning across 2 different counties. Firefighters began working on perimeter fire lines yesterday, but low visibility caused by all that heavy smoke has hindered their progress. As of this morning, the fire was only 8% contained. State officials expect the wind gusts to peak around tomorrow afternoon, and in the meantime, they're fighting to stop the flames from spreading further south.
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court is once again defending Second Amendment rights. In a 6-3 ruling that was split along party lines, the court ruled against banning bump stocks on semi-automatic rifles. Bump stocks are used to boost the firing capability of a rifle by reducing recoil. Justice Clarence Thomas ruled that the ATF was wrong to ban these accessories after the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting. He said that bump stocks do not turn rifles into machine guns. This is because the device doesn't actually change how the gun is fired. While these accessories can significantly increase the rate of fire, they're still slower than fully automatic firearms. Justice Samuel Alito added that the 2017 shooting did not change current legislation. It simply showed that a rifle with a bump stock can be just as deadly as a machine gun. He said that a new legislation would be required to ban bump stocks.
And some more legal updates here. Pro-lifers saw a pretty major setback on Friday where a federal judge out of Arkansas dismissed a lawsuit filed by 17 Republican states challenging a new Biden rule saying workers are entitled to time off and other accommodations for abortions. The states, led by Arkansas and Tennessee, were asking for a nationwide preliminary injunction before the new rules take effect tomorrow. Judge D.B. Marshall Jr., he gave the ruling rejecting that request, saying the states lacked standing and failed to make what he called a compelling case for a national injunction. He said this, quote, "The state's fear of overreach by one branch of the federal government cannot be cured with an overreach by another." Arkansas AG Tim Griffin, he responded saying he's disappointed in the ruling, but said he's confident the states will ultimately be successful.
And still in pro-life news here, a judge in Missouri ruled that the state's ban on abortion does not necessarily come from religious beliefs. Interestingly, those who opposed the ban were religious groups, including dozens of leaders from Christian, Jewish, and Unitarian groups. They claimed that the lawmakers who passed legislation restricting abortion in most cases were religiously motivated. Therefore, the law was unconstitutional. However, Judge Jason Sennheiser ruled that while the determination that life begins at conception may run counter to some religious beliefs, it is not itself necessarily a religious belief. He added that as such, it does not violate the religious conscience of those who disagree with the ban. According to the Associated Press, more and more people are trying to argue against abortion restrictions using freedom of religion.
It's very curious because I'm curious on what grounds of religious beliefs are you trying to ground your support for abortion? That is very odd.
Yeah, it's a little bit disturbing that these are Christian and Jewish people who at least say that they are who they claim that their religion goes against.
Quite
banning
strange
abortion.
and disturbing, as you said. That's well said.
All right, well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And you probably know you can also find us on social media. Until next time, we'll catch you tomorrow with more news.